Every year, women still travel to a small rocky island off the coast of Senegal to spend an entire night completely alone. No lights, no phone, no other human presence anywhere nearby. They remain there until sunrise, voluntarily. The island is surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean in every direction. The wind blows constantly. Waves strike the black rocks as if marking a rhythm that no clock can measure. Only silence. A silence that is not empty. It has been cultivated, preserved, respected for generations. It is a voluntary act that, according to locals, can redefine destinies. Some women travel there seeking fertility. Others are searching for something harder to name, the feeling that life has somehow stopped flowing. Some say that there, between the sea and the rock, the invisible listens more closely. The place is known as Île aux Fétiches, a name given by outsiders who saw it but did not understand it. What happens on that piece of land is not folklore or superstition. It is part of an entire worldview that survived colonization, religious transformation, and the heavy passage of time. This story does not begin on the island. It begins much earlier, in the ocean, in the ancestors, and in the very human fear that destiny itself might become blocked. And once you understand what is really at stake there, you may never look at silence the same way again. Just a few kilometers from Dakar, the capital of Senegal, there is a small piece of land that at first glance looks like nothing more than a geographical accident along the African coast. Rough rocks, sparse vegetation, and the Atlantic stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The island is culturally associated with the Lebou people, an ethnic group historically connected to the sea, fishing, and spiritual traditions that predate both Islam and Christianity in the region. Modern Senegal is predominantly Muslim. Mosques dominate the skylines of its cities. The call to prayer echoes through the streets 5 times each day. Yet traditional spirituality never completely disappeared. It adapted, it blended, it survived quietly, like an underground river that keeps flowing even when the surface appears dry. Among the Lebou people, the sea is not simply a source of food. It is an entity, a pathway, a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the ancestors. And the island, isolated by water in every direction, represents a liminal territory, a place between worlds. It is there that the ritual of female isolation takes place, practiced for generations and passed on in quiet voices. Stories like this still exist far beyond the radar of the modern world. If you want to continue exploring these hidden places, subscribe now to Rites Syncretism. Long before European maps drew the outline of that coastline, the ocean was already considered a living force. For the Lebou people, the sea was never just moving water. It was memory, judgment, response. Elders taught that certain territories do not belong entirely to humans. There are places that function as boundaries between dimensions. The small island gradually became one of those places. Ancient stories spoke of women who spent a night on the island and returned different, not transformed in some visible spectacle, but different inside, with a new posture, a calm that had not been there before. Some became pregnant months later after years of unsuccessful attempts. Others described vivid dreams, encounters with ancestral figures, voices speaking in languages they somehow recognized. The phenomenon was described as alignment, as if something that had been crooked had returned to balance. In this worldview, fertility is a spiritual and emotional condition, not merely biological. The process begins before the crossing. There is preparation, quiet offerings, sacred objects placed in specific points on the island. When the woman is brought there, there is no ceremony. She remains alone for hours, sometimes until sunrise. And there, without distraction or human interference, something happens, at least according to the tradition that has survived centuries. There is a moment during the night considered the most delicate part of the experience, the middle of the night, when the wind slows,
when the ocean seems to breathe more slowly, when the mind begins losing its sense of time. No artificial light, no clock, no voices, no screens, nothing that resembles everyday life. The brain, deprived of conversation and distraction, begins amplifying natural sounds. Waves feel closer. Wind patterns begin to resemble whispers. Many women describe what they call a presence, not a visible figure, but the sensation of not being completely alone. Some describe visions with open eyes, ancestral faces, ancient feminine figures, symbols connected to water. Others experience silent crying. Others describe a deep calm. From a neuroscientific perspective, sensory isolation can produce altered states of consciousness. Similar experiences have been documented in deserts, mountains, and dense forests around the world. Perhaps science and tradition are not opposing explanations. Perhaps they are simply different languages describing the same experience. The ritual survives because it is not an isolated event. It is a structure. Separation, transition, reintegration, a pattern identified in rites of passage across cultures. First comes separation. The woman is removed from her familiar environment, from expectations and invisible pressures. Then comes the transition, the night itself, the confrontation with her own interior world. Finally comes reintegration, the quiet return to daily life. Something in her posture, her gaze, her presence has shifted. The boat crossing is short but symbolically powerful. The city disappears. Only rock and horizon remain. And when the boat leaves, the sound of the engine fades. Only the wind remains.
The ritual is often described as a fertility ritual. But fertility here means more than childbirth. It represents open paths, restored balance, the reactivation of a blocked life force. When a woman arrives there, she often carries years of silent pressure, family expectations, comparisons, invisible blame. Alone before the Atlantic, she is no longer defined by social roles. She becomes simply a human being facing the sea. Science acknowledges that chronic stress affects fertility. Traditional belief describes it as spiritual blockage, two languages describing similar realities. When pregnancy occurs months later, the ritual is remembered with reverence. When it does not, the explanation remains the same: balance has been restored. Stories like this exist on every continent. Share this video with someone who would appreciate discovering them. There is also a silent tension surrounding the ritual. Senegal is deeply shaped by Islam, yet ancestral traditions continue to exist alongside it. The ritual is not publicly promoted. Discretion itself is part of its power. Younger generations in Dakar increasingly question ancestral practices, yet the ritual survives, not by force, but by conviction. The island is not just a place, it is a filter. Similar patterns appear in monasteries, mountains, forests, and indigenous rites. Interestingly, it is women, not men, who undergo this isolation. For some, it is empowerment. For others, it may reflect social pressure. The silence of the island does not give the answer you expect. It gives the answer you need. Modern hospitals exist in Dakar. Scientific diagnoses exist. Medical treatments exist. Yet some women still cross to the island. Because medicine answers how, ritual answers why. Ritual transforms chaos into a narrative, a journey with a beginning and an end. And that narrative changes how people experience suffering. In the end, the island remains there. And on certain nights, a woman sits alone beneath the African sky. The island does not possess magical power. What it provides is structure for transformation, a space without distraction, without expectation. The real question is not about Senegal. The real question is about you. If the world stopped for one night, would you remain?
Some transformations only happen after the entire night has been crossed. And as long as the Atlantic continues striking those rocks, the ritual will remain, a reminder that some journeys must be lived, not explained. If this story took you somewhere within yourself, tell us in the comments. Is there a place or tradition in your culture that serves the same purpose? And if you're not yet subscribed to Rotus Sagradas, this is the moment. Every story we bring is meant to change the way we see the world.